There's a special nutrient in this and also in dark meat, believe it or not, that is good for our heart health and athletic performance. In fact, it actually depends on it. So what is this amazing ingredient and how do we know if we're getting enough of it? I'm going to answer those questions today and more on this first segment of White Coat Nutrition. That nutrient is taurine, which is an amino acid, and if you drink Red Bull or other energy drinks, you've probably heard of it. It's a sulfur-containing amino acid, and it's also in a class of its own because it's considered a conditionally essential amino acid. It's manufactured in our bodies from methionine or cysteine. Methionine is another one of those essential amino acids, meaning we have to get it from food, whereas the cysteine is not essential, meaning that we can manufacture it in our body. So therefore, we can make taurine either from cysteine or from methionine from the foods we eat. And on a side note, now I'll be talking about an article that came out in 2018 that triggered a national uproar about taurine in grain-free dog food and dilated cardiomyopathy in golden retrievers. That'll be in the follow-up video to this, along with where the research stands today on grain-free dog food. But back to humans. Today I'm going to be talking about a journal article that came out called Taurine in Sports and Exercise. And it's going to hopefully answer some questions for us about taurine and if it's beneficial for enhancing our athletic performance. So then we may be able to answer that question, is the taurine they add to energy drinks really that helpful? Secondly, I'm going to look at an article that's going to be discussing heart health and energy production in the body, and it's a little bit more technical, so hopefully we'll stay awake for that one. And lastly, I'm going to talk about the daily recommended allowance of taurine and if we are getting enough of it in our diets by showing you different foods and how much taurine they contain. This is a review study on taurine in sports and exercise from 2021, so it's pretty recent. In this Journal of International Society of Sports Nutrition from May 2021, they summarized the current evidence regarding the efficacy of taurine in aerobic and anaerobic performance, muscle soreness, and recovery time. They ended up using 19 different studies to do this review and were able to conclude several things. They were able to say that the VO2 max was improved, the time to reach exhaustion was better, anaerobic performance was better, there was less muscle damage, better peak power, better recovery, and also a decrease in lactate and certain inflammatory markers. The dosing appeared to be effective between 1 to 3 grams daily across a span of 6 to 15 days, and the taurine was taken approximately 1 to 3 hours before activity. They conclude that there were also some mixed findings on recovery and muscle damage mitigation. They also noted timing of taurine ingestion and the type of exercise performed might contribute to the effectiveness of the taurine. And lastly, they suggested more studies needed to be done to better understand the effects of taurine. So it sounds like there might be some benefit to the addition of taurine to energy drinks, although it's hard to say to what extent, and also obviously more studies need to be done. But the question remains, how much taurine do we need? It's a little confusing. The recommendation range is from between 500 to 3,000 milligrams, with some studies using up to 6,000 milligrams a day for certain health conditions like hepatitis. But keep in mind, some studies say that too much taurine can affect your nitrogen balance and put a strain on your kidneys. So this article starts out by talking about taurine and how it protects against aging, inflammation, metabolic syndrome, cancer, neurological disorders, and cardiovascular diseases. And speaking of the cardiovascular diseases, taurine was first used in 1985 in Japan to treat heart failure patients. It has also been shown in studies to improve the exercise capacity of patients with heart failure, which is likely due to myocardial energy production in the form of ATP. And that's the energy that's produced by mitochondria. Before we talk about the way taurine helps the heart, let's first talk about its antioxidant properties. Many studies show that taurine has antioxidant properties and protects the mitochondria against oxidative stress by reducing something called superoxide generation. although they don't really know the exact mechanism for this. But recent studies showed that taurine has various ways of preventing superoxide in the mitochondria, either by conjugation of mitochondrial transfer RNA or by promoting the activity of a copper-zinc superoxide dismutase. And there are various other studies that show that taurine stabilizes reduced glutathione levels in the cell, and we know that glutathione is a powerhouse antioxidant. Another form of taurine generated in the body, called N-chlorotaurine, is the form that regulates inflammation by controlling the production of certain antioxidant genes. And taurine also regulates calcium. Taurine regulates calcium homeostasis to maintain the cardiac contractile function. In general, heart failure is caused by impaired contraction because of a mishandling of calcium across the cell membrane. And that reduces calcium sensitivity of the contractile proteins and insufficient energy or ATP generation to drive a contraction. In other words, there's just no energy to have a contraction. Now, in one study, they showed heart failure patients in Japan that received taurine supplements daily for 4 to 8 weeks showed improvement in the systolic left ventricular function, and they measured that by looking at increased cardiac output and stroke volume, better ejection fractions, and also the rate at which the fibers shortened in the heart muscle. Also, taurine was supplemented to high blood pressure patients at 1.6 grams daily, that's 1,600 milligrams, for 12 weeks, and that lowered blood pressure and improved vascular function. And they also talk about the fact that there are studies in over 25 different countries that have reported taurine intake from seafood, nuts, soy, and milk help to reduce cardiovascular disease and hypercholesterolemia. Let's take a look at some of the foods that have taurine in them. Chicken, the dark meat, has about 200 milligrams in a 3.5 ounce serving, whereas the light meat only has about 14 milligrams in the same size serving, so that's a huge change. Also, turkey has 300 milligrams in a 3.5 ounce serving. Now, when we get to the Red Bull, we're talking 1,000 milligrams per serving. And if you're looking at all the energy drinks, 2,000 milligrams per serving in the Monster and 3,000 milligrams in the Rockstar. Now, finally, we didn't talk about shellfish, but shellfish actually contain more than the turkey and chicken. Scallops contain 827 milligrams in a 3.5 ounce serving. Clams, 523 milligrams in a 3.5 ounce serving. Mussels, 655 milligrams in a 3.5 ounce serving. Beef, only 40 milligrams per 3.5 ounce serving. And eggs and milk and dairy, probably little to none. So I think it's pretty clear that if you do eat your dark meat, chicken or turkey or tuna, shellfish on a daily basis, you're probably getting enough. Or if you drink energy drinks, you're probably getting enough. But there isn't as much taurine in the dairy or beef that we thought. And other foods like black beans do have some, but they're pretty much in that under 10 range. So there you have it. Some foods are higher in taurine and help you get what you need, and others are not. So there are still questions about how much you really need when we think about that. And luckily, our bodies can also manufacture taurine from our cysteine and methionine. So if you're getting cysteine in certain foods like chickpeas, couscous, eggs, lentils, oats, walnuts, sunflower seeds, then you can actually use that as a building block for taurine. And there you have it. Join me next time. I'm going to be focusing more on the article that came out about grain-free dog food and low taurine in golden retrievers, and if it's the cause of dilated cardiomyopathy, and where that study stands today about 4 years later.